Hello everybody, in this video we are going to continue our conversation with quadratic factors and their zeros. In some of the previous videos we have already been talking about what a factor is for a quadratic function, and we've been talking about where a zero is on the graph for a quadratic function. So there's just a couple things that I want to reiterate in this particular video is how many different ways we can refer to an x-intercept. So we know the x-intercept of a line or a parabola is where the graph crosses the x-axis. It's the exact number and where it crosses the x-axis. So remember, your x-axis is the horizontal axis right here. And so we just want to see and identify on graphs where they cross. So x-intercept is pretty much one of the words that we already know. But when we're talking about quadratics and we're talking about linear functions, sometimes they refer to the x-intercept as zeros. Sometimes they refer to them as roots. What are the roots of this quadratic function? Or they can refer to them as solutions. So one of the things that I want to point out, especially us getting closer to taking the STAR Algebra 1 test or any state test that you're taking, is that they can ask the same thing 4 different ways. They can give you a function, they can give you a graph and ask you to find the roots. They can ask you to find the zeros, the solution, or the x-intercepts. And I need you to know that they're asking for the same thing, and you just need to look in the right place for all of these, which is the x-axis. So with that being said, that's all we're doing. We're taking our factors and we're turning them into x-intercepts, very specific x-intercepts. So if you notice this one right here, we've already we've already taken our function and put a 0 in its place. So the f of x is now a 0. And we're just going to work this out. So I'm going to move this up a little bit. I'm going to label this as the A, as the B, as the C. And I'm going to draw my x right here. I'm going to remind you that this plus sign right here is going to tell us that we're looking for 2 numbers that add up to be 7. So I'm going to put the plus 7x right here so you know what we're trying to add up to be. And I'm going to multiply our A and our C. So 5 times 2 gives us 10. And when we find the numbers that add up to be 7, we'll put them right here. So 10 is a very small number, so you don't need to use your calculator to find the factors of 10. So we're going to start with the easy one every single time, 1 and 10, then 2 and 5, and I believe that that is it for the number 10. So since this is the only numbers that multiply to be 10, we need to ask ourselves, which one of these 2 numbers add up to be 7? Well, 1 and 10 give us 11, 2 and 5 gives us the 7 that we're looking for. Because we're adding, remember that both of your signs will be the same. So I'm going to say 5x, 2x, and because we need it to be a positive 7, both of these will be positive. So addition, same signs. Could be 2 positives, 2 negatives. When we're subtracting, the signs will be different. One will be positive while the other one would be negative. So just remember that. It makes it a little bit easier to deal with your signs. All right, let's expand. So we're going to replace the 7x with these 2 numbers right here. So we're going to say 5x squared plus 5x plus 2x plus 2 equals 0. I like to color code, so I just want to remind you what happened to the 7 when you come back and look at your work. It's been replaced. And because we now have 4 terms, we're going to find the GCF. So the biggest number that divides into 5 and 5 is another 5. They do both have x's. That's why it's important to include your variable here, because that's going to help us when we factor by grouping. So let's take out 1x from both of them. 5 divided by 5 is still 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0, so no x's there. Bring down the plus sign. And then notice that we have 2 2's, so the biggest number that divides into 2 is 2. They don't have the same variable, so we're just dividing by 2. 1x plus 1. And then because both of these are exactly the same, we'll write it down once. I like to cross mine out and bring down our two GCFs right here. All right, don't forget that we're setting both of these equal to 0. So we have to take both of our factors, both of our x's, and set them equal to 0. So we say x plus 1 equals 0. 5x plus 2 equals 0. And if we're trying to solve for x, so let's subtract 1 from both sides. It doesn't matter that there's a 0 there, because 0 is just like any other number, and we're still solving. All right? Let's subtract 2 from both sides, and we get 5x minus 2, divide by 5, and so we get x is equal to negative 2 over 5. Now, if you don't know how to graph a fraction, you're more than welcome to take this negative 2, divide it by 5, and find that your x-intercept is going to be a negative 0.4. All right, I'm going to go through here in color code so you know where all these numbers are coming from. So our first factor was x plus 1. We set it equal to 0 and found that one of our x-intercepts is negative 1. So I'm going to come over here and make my dot right there. And then we can see that the second factor was 5x plus 2. And we set that equal to 0. We were able to solve completely for x. And we ended up with this fraction that's equivalent to this decimal. And so these are going to be really, really close together. So it's going to be right here. So this is a very, very thin parabola. So I'm going to color code just so you know that this one matches that first x value, and this one right here matches the second x value. All right, just to go over a couple of things just so we can get our vocabulary straight here. When you are being asked to identify the factors of a quadratic function, these are our factors. Factors mean what do we need to multiply to give us our quadratic function. So these right here are considered our factors. Okay, so those are our factors. And this right here and this right here are considered one of these words on the top. They're considered the zeros of the quadratic function. They could be considered the roots, the solutions, or the x-intercepts, because these words all mean the same thing. So anytime they're asking you for one of these four words, they're looking for a very exact number where your graph crosses the x-axis. And if they're asking you for a factor, they're asking you for expressions that can multiply to give us our quadratic function. So just want to make sure that we are clear on our vocabulary words so you know exactly what they're asking you for. So I hope that this explanation has helped. There is a way you can use your calculator or an online calculator to help you check your answers. So that video will also be linked in our Canvas course. So make sure you click on it so you can use that as a way to check your work. Okay, with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next videos.